Hey crafters, Leo with Dreaming Tree, and welcome to the assembly video for our Frostwood Manor. Now in this video we're going to go over some inking, embossing, and we're going to assemble, just kind of pre-prep the panels with the windows. We're going to do some vellum and a few other little odds and ends. So kind of breaking this up into more than one video just so that it's a lot easier to follow along, okay? So anyway, first thing I want to talk about is embossing. Now, we did our best to allow for most, if not all, the pieces to fit on an embossing folder about this size, which is pretty much the standard size. It's like 4.5 by 6.5 or 6.25. Now, I found this one, and we have a link to it on the site, and I really love the details on the wood siding for this one. I wanted to give this, a nice wooden look. So notice that there are some pieces that obviously are larger than the embossing folder, but because of how things are broken up, you can actually run this through multiple times. So now one thing that you want to keep in mind, if you do happen to get the same exact folder, if you open it up and feel it, okay, you'll feel one side where you can, the ridges, the little separators for each of the planks are very pronounced. I can feel them here, okay? This is the side that you want your texture facing down on that side, which you can see here. I want it to look like this, okay? So I want it to be debossed, the little lines here to be debossed or like sunken in. So I put my texture side down like this. And what I did for pretty much all of these was I aligned it with as far as I could up to this edge here, okay, and I ran it through my embossing machine, and then when I was done, I took it out and I overlaid it a little bit. I didn't just do the sections that were missing, I kind of overlaid it a little bit. You'll notice that the little ridges that are created from the first pass through will actually kind of just fit into the existing ridges here. So almost kind of locks it in place, and then I will run it through, or I did run it through, the embossing machine twice. But obviously, just because this is sticking out doesn't mean it's not going to work. It'll work just fine, and it'll only emboss these sections here, okay? So with the pieces that are longer than your embossing folder, that's how I accomplished it, okay? Now, there were a few pieces where essentially, again, this piece, the orientation on the back, this is the little compartment that opens and closes so you can put your light in. The orientation for this is supposed to be like, it's going to go on the back of it like this, and obviously I wanted to keep the siding uniform horizontally throughout the entire project, but that just wouldn't work. You can see here that it would just not fit. So with a few pieces, I did put them in like this. So what we're going to end up with is sections of our house with some vertical paneling instead of horizontal, which I looked into, and it's actually becoming more common these days on newer homes, okay? So there's a mix and match of vertical and horizontal siding, and I actually think it's going to break things up a little bit, make them a little less monotonous, and add a little bit of interest to the house. Okay, so obviously you can tell which sections won't fit, right? So this one I put in like this, so we do have some vertical paneling on these. Now obviously if you have folders that give you this siding sort of look, and you can put them all in so that everything is horizontal, by all means, feel free. I'm just going over what I have here. And you can see here's some of the other siding. And again, I'll just go over it one more time. I labeled this F for front so that I know I'm always placing it on here. I've got my texture side down. I pop it in there all the way up to the very top edge, close it up, run it through the embossing machine, open it up, and then I literally just took it, flipped it around, overlapping just a handful of planks. It's okay if it does it twice. And then closing it up again, very gently. Kind of held it like this, just to make sure it doesn't slide out of place as I'm closing it up. sure that it's in there, press it down, and then run it through like this, okay? And that's how I did those. There are some of these, this color here, and that one, I opted to go with the vertical paneling on those, okay? So you can see how that looks. And then finally, the only other embossing that I did was on the foundation, and I found this really cool, I think it's Tim Holtz actually. Yep, it's this guy here. And oh, one other thing I forgot to mention. If you don't want to do this, that's okay. But what I did, you can see on this folder here, you can see how the texture goes all the way down here and then it stops. Okay, now on this one here, what I actually did was I cut this. I cut this off so that it doesn't abruptly stop like that, because it will give you, it's going to actually create an imprint that looks like that edge. Let me see if I have an example of it. Yeah, so you can see what it does there. Okay, I didn't want that. So I took and trimmed the very bottom of this off so that that blank space wasn't there. And I actually did the same thing on this Tim Holtz folder. Okay, now you don't have to do it, but if you don't, you may not get the same result I'm getting. And then again, I did that because I knew that for some of these pieces, like this one for example, it's a little bit too long. It's a little bit too long to fit. So I had to run it through twice, and I kind of just put just a little bit of it in there the second go and ran it through, okay? And I did trim off this part here. Okay, so that kind of covers the embossing portion. Now the only part I inked on the foundation part was, well, I actually inked the top and bottom, but only the bottom is going to be visible as far as the inking, because there's going to be a white overlay on the top part of it. Okay, so that's really not going to make too much of a difference as far as the inking. It might be subtle, but anyway, let's go over and just kind of look at the windows real quick here. Now, the majority of everything is going to just have two layers, a brown and a white. And I don't need to go over every single one of these. Essentially what you're doing is just locating rectangles that are the same size, and you're going to glue those together, with the exception of a few, okay? And those are the ones where the white portion has these little cutouts, okay? Any window frame that has those little cutouts is also going to have a gray layer that goes behind it, like so, and that's just to give that gray accent there, and then it will also have that brown layer. Okay, so this window and this one, which are identical, are going to have that gray layer. You can see here there's a gray and a brown. So there's only 1, 2, and then this one here, 3 windows that are made of 3 layers, the gray included. The rest of them are all going to be just brown and white. Okay, and then we also have a door. Okay, and the door is made up of the white, and then there's a brown, and then a secondary brown. Okay, so this will actually put together. We have these little panels here, and then 2 little gold pieces for the mailbox door and the handle. We'll actually assemble that here in just a moment. Okay, we have 2 little lanterns. We were going to make them dimensional, but opted to go flat because those are super tiny. And then there are some little accent pieces, accent sections next to the door, which is made up of these pieces here. We will put that together, okay? But for now, what I want you to do is just get all of your windows glued together. Again, just going brown or white on brown. And, well, you really can't do it wrong, because all of the white trim goes around the perimeter, and everything else we will assemble together. So let's get our windows all put together, and then we will move on to the next step. Okay, so I've got most of the windows constructed. We're gonna put these on these various panels. These two sets of windows we're going to wait until later, just because the light blue portion of the paneling is separated into two, and we don't want to try to force that right now. In the meantime, let's put together the door. Okay, let me move this out of the way just for a second. And these are the two little side parts of the door. We're going to start by putting the main frame onto the stone-colored cardstock. And you'll notice that the little rectangles cut out of this, they're not the same size. You want the longer rectangle up at the top so that it fits these three little windows correctly. Just make sure you line that up as accurately as you can, and then press down, get that on there nice and snug. We'll do the same thing with this one. And then we have a little panel. It's going to go on the bottom section. So I just kind of picture this as, well, you know, one day you cut everything out. The next day you do some inking and some embossing. You're welcome to ink these panels if you want. I decided against it, but you know, depending on, you might be making this house for Christmas or Halloween. We wanted to do something that just has a winter feel. So I'm going to keep it mostly pure looking. This little piece here, you want to pop that in there while trying to maintain a nice even border around, so a little bit of that darker color shows through and creates that nice contrast there. And then we'll put our little door together, and then we can get the windows glued onto the siding, and we'll probably wrap this video up by putting our vellum onto the main structure. Okay, so there's 2/3 of the door. Here's the other part of the door here. We'll start with the white and the darker brown. This darker brown, we're going to align this flush with the bottom. Okay, just get your glue on there. Flip it over. And that's going to fit snug around the cutouts on the white. But again, just make sure that it's flush with the bottom of the white. And of course centered. So you have a nice even white border all the way around. Press that into place. And now we'll take this piece, okay, and it's going to go on like this. There's going to be a little bit of that dark brown showing through all these cutouts here, okay? So do your best to get that on as accurately as possible, and be sure to not overdo it with the glue so it doesn't end up bleeding through. And then we have a few little gold pieces for the, we've got one of those little built-in mailboxes that we're going to put in here. Again, make sure you line this up flush with the bottom. Just like that. There we go. Press that down. Okay, these little smaller rectangles are going to be panels, just like we did on this section here. So you want to make sure you get that nice and centered, like so. Okay, same with the other one. And then the gold pieces are going to fit in snug like a little puzzle piece. Okay, pop that right in there. Hopefully my head wasn't in the way. Okay. And let's just make sure we got the right size going in the right spot. The handle is going to be a little bit smaller than the little mailbox. Just pop a little bit of glue on there and pop it right in there, like I said, just like a little puzzle. And our final little piece. Just need a tiny dot of glue on there. And pop that right in there. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so I guess we could start with the door. And that's something that we can pop on right now, not a big deal. The vellum is going to go on the actual structure, so we don't need to worry about putting it on these panels. I'll throw a little bit of glue around. Oh, and this these little lanterns, it's just that that stone color with white on top of it. And then you're just going to match up the little hole, the little rectangle there. And that's cut out so that when we do put our light in there, it'll go through the vellum and add a dazzling little light to our project. And make sure you get that lined up as accurately as you can. There we go. Okay, now let's get the door installed. Again, this is also going to be flush with the bottom, and then just make sure that you line it up with the little cutouts there where the vellum's going to go ultimately. Just like that. And I'm using the cutouts as my initial guide, and then kind of using my finger to feel, make sure that it is flush, visually inspect it, make sure it looks nice and straight up and down. Beautiful. And then these, obviously, there's going to be a little bit of a gap between the door and these side panels. All you need to do is just ensure that you get the cutouts for where the light is going to shine through to match up. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to throw a little bit of glue right there as well. Okay, and then once we have this complete, what you're going to do is you're going to get all of the windows glued down onto the panels, with the exception of these two. Again, these are the only ones that have 3 windows all together that do not have this little detail on the bottom. These we're going to leave for later on in the process. Everything else that you see on the screen right now, and you can pause it if you need to, I'll make sure I kind of squeeze everything in so you can see it, and pause it and see how everything works. Just make sure that the rectangular windows, when you do glue them down, that you do in fact have the correct one as far as the size goes. And I will point out what I mean, because I almost goofed up. Well, I didn't glue anything down yet. I was just kind of laying things out, and I realized that I mixed one up, and I'll explain how and why. Okay, but that looks beautiful. Okay, so that one's, this is done. We can put that off to the side. Let me show you here. I think the one I ran into issues with was this one. Okay, so you can see here, same type of window, same shape, same size. Only difference is the size. So initially, I took this one and put it on here, and it kind of looks like it would have worked. Or maybe it was vice versa. Maybe I took the small one and put it on the big one. That's what it was. Because that looks like it would work. But just make sure that you get the right one in the right spot, and this small one goes here. You can tell that these windows, and again, let me bring them all in on screen so you can see how everything is going to go. So here is your opportunity to pause and just make sure that you've got everything lined up correctly. Let me bring this one into the frame as well so you can see it. This is the only one with the 3 windows that we're going to put on. This goes on the face of the house, and it's all one piece, so we're good. So these are all the panels with the windows and how they go on. So at this point, you can go ahead and do that. Get all these windows glued down, and I will meet you back here so that we can take and begin applying the vellum to the main structure of the house. So as you can see here, we've got all of our windows glued down to our panels. And if I didn't mention it before, you can essentially tell that something is a panel because it doesn't have any tabs on it. Okay, so obviously there are sections of the house that are the same color but are structural, which we will discuss here right now actually. I'm going to move this off to the side. We're done with that for now. And these are the structural pieces. And as you can see, there are a series of tabs on all of them. So it's way too much to put into one frame. So what we'll do, I will lay this out so that it makes sense to you. Move this out of the way for a second. There are 3 pieces of vellum that kind of look the same. It's these that look like a house. Two of them are identical. One kind of looks like it, but it's a little bit shorter. And that's going to go on the center of the house. And on the same piece is another piece for the door and the little lanterns. Okay, so let's just start with the front of the house here. And now obviously when we glue our vellum down, we want to keep the glue around the perimeter of the cutouts. And I would try to not get too close to the cutouts, because sometimes when you press the vellum into place, it has a tendency to kind of push the glue towards the openings, and we just don't want to blemish this beautiful vellum. We went with this nice gold color. We were going to do a neutral, just a standard vellum color, but when the light was off, it just didn't look as good. So we went with this beautiful gold. And again, when you're gluing this down, try to make sure that you don't encroach onto the folds here, okay? And you really just need to make sure that you get it nice and tight around the cutouts. Okay, so we'll do this one here. And just like I did up there, I'm just going to do a series of dots around the perimeter of the cutouts. And if the rest of it just kind of hangs there, that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. And this will not really be visible from the outside anyway, so it doesn't have to be pretty. Okay, just press that into place. Again, just making sure that you have all the cutouts covered. And let me just kind of show you while we're here. It's kind of fun. That's going to go there. And then this part's going to go here. And you can see that beautiful gold showing through and how it kind of complements the browns and the whites. So already starting to shape up and look really, really nice. All right, I'm going to flatten this out, put that one off to the side, and we'll kind of just continue with the vellum portion here. Okay, so you can see how this one goes on. And same thing applies here. You can kind of, this one here I can comfortable doing some lines. And for this little area here, what I would do is just kind of dab that with your finger so that it's already pretty much smushed, and you know that it's not going to end up inside of the cutout area. Just press that down, get that to stick. Let's take a look. Beautiful. And we got a little bit of glue on there. That's okay, because we've got panels going over that anyway. Just try to get that out of your system now. Make sure your table's nice and clean. All right, moving on here to the third section. Just do a little squiggly there, a little line there, a little line there, and then maybe a thin line here that will, that's thin enough where I don't think I even need to dab it. And I'm starting with the point here, making sure that I get it right in there, nice and centered, and just press that down. You don't really need a lot of glue to get the vellum in place, and that looks great. Put that off to the side. Now these two are a little wonky, but they're actually the most obvious sections to get in place. This is kind of like a little arrow shape, and then this one here, you can tell it's got a little cutout for the slit. So we'll get that in place here in a second. Let's start with this window. Get around this window. Get around this window, and just add a little extra for good measure. I will start with the point again and just drop it in there, making sure it's nice and centered. Press that down. There you go. We could have done little individual ones, just felt like it was more work. Okay, make sure you have the correct orientation for this. And down here we're gonna have to be, we definitely have to make sure that we get around this window relatively close. Throw a little there, and a little bit around this window. Okay, make sure that this little slit is in the correct orientation, and I would use that as a kind of a guide for placement. Just keep it centered, and the rest should just fall into place, like so. There we go. Let's take a look at that. Beautiful. Put that one off to the side, and we'll do the same thing here. And that'll be it for our vellum. And we are going to pretty much start putting together the actual structure. One other thing that I'm going to cover in this video is the base. Now that is, I guess it's optional. I like putting it on the base. We opted to go with a base that sort of just contours the project rather than making it square. I know a lot of you kind of create your own little scenes for these things, and sometimes, I don't know, sometimes the bases that we include seem a little constricting, and we're just giving the base just enough padding to keep the house nice and strong and secure, and then you have the freedom to dress it up however you want. Again, using this little slit as my guide, getting it centered, and then the rest should fall into place. Press that down nice and easy. And there you have it. Okay. All right, let's take a look at our base. And actually, this odd color here is just a template. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a marker. I'm going to use a gold marker since this is a black foam core. And you're going to cut this out using an X-Acto. I'm aligning it to the edge on a side that's already pretty much cut. And then I'll take and just kind of draw the perimeter with my marker, like that. Again, we do include a standard paper bottom for the house, but if you want to give it extra support, I've included a little base with some cute little snow drifts, and that will just kind of make it easier to move this thing around. You can use that little template as scrap. Grab a nice sharp X-Acto, and I'm not worried about that little sticker on there. That's all going to be hidden away anyway. And we're just going to cut this out. And as I mentioned, we're going to use this to reinforce our base, which is made out of paper. I'm going to be changing out my X-Acto blade here at some point. You can tell that it's kind of losing its sharpness a bit. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We've obviously left a little bit of wiggle room so that if it's not exact, it's not a big deal. Try to keep it nice and straight. I notice sometimes when I use an X-Acto, I kind of hold it at an angle, and it's not always perfectly straight, up and down. Almost has a little taper to it. But even that is not going to affect it all that much. Okay, so you get the idea here. Whoops. This marker's pretty fat, so I want to try to stay towards the inside of the mark. Or in the center's fine too. Okay, so you get the idea. We'll get that, and then we'll wrap this video up with the assembly of the base, and then we'll get into the actual structure. So go ahead and wrap this up, and then grab your pieces for the base. Now, we used a color for the grass that kind of signifies the color that your typical grass gets in the winter because of the lack of chlorophyll. So it's a little bit of like a thyme green. Okay, so there's our base, and I'll meet you back here in just a second to assemble it. So let's take a look at our base here. Now, you'll notice that we do have some symmetrical pieces, and what I want you to do is, obviously you want to fold everything at the score marks just to get that ready to go. And I want you to flip them over so that the little score marks, and the numbers, I guess we'll call them, most of them are, I guess, what you would consider Roman numerals, with the exception of this piece that is basically 4 marks in the shape of a square or a circle. Okay, so this is Roman numeral 1, and I've got the number facing up, and this is going to be the back of our house, and then there's going to be 2 with Roman numeral 2s, and those are going to connect here. Okay, then you're going to have 2 with Roman numeral 3s. Those are going to connect to the ends of Roman numeral 2, and then Roman numeral 4 is going to connect at the end of Roman numeral 3. Now, before we start shaping anything at all, what I want to do is I'm going to lay this down flat so that my little triangular tabs are at the edge. Okay, so this is Roman numeral 1. Okay, I'm going to take this piece here with Roman numeral 2 on it. And the reason I'm doing this is just to ensure that I get this glued down accurately. It's just a lot easier to connect these tabs right here while this is flat. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, and this is a pretty small little triangle. I'm going to make sure that you get glue on the entire thing. This is just to create continuity between all of these sections. So we're going to take piece number 2 and just connect it right to that little triangle. Make sure that your Roman numerals are on the same side here. So I've got Roman numeral 1 here, not here. Roman numeral 2 here, not here. Okay, just pressing and holding that together. And then just make sure that it's straight. If you need to, you can kind of lay these on each other like this, and you can tell that these tabs match up on both sides. That indicates that I've got a nice, accurate connection between these two pieces. Be very gentle with this, obviously. Okay, so now I'm going to scoot on over to the other side of Roman numeral 1, and with my Roman numeral 2 up on top here, not on the bottom. Okay, we're going to connect it to this piece here, just like we did on that side. So go ahead and apply your glue to this little triangle. Lay that down flat, grab the other end of piece number 2, and press and hold that into place. Should have flattened this out a little bit more. So this whole thing sits nice and flat for us. Just be gentle. Okay, and we can take this little section here. Just make sure that it's nice and aligned. It is rather delicate, so be careful. Okay, so 1 and 2 are connected on both sides. Now we're going to grab Roman numeral 3. Okay, and we're going to scoot this over to one side. And we're going to connect this here. So go ahead and put a little bit of glue on this tab here. And technically, you can't really goof this up because one side has a tab, the other doesn't. You obviously want to connect the side with the tab to the side that doesn't have the tab. And I kind of lost track of where that little score mark was there. So I'm going to press this down and then just make sure that I've got it right out to the edge of that. That looks good. There we go. Okay. Now we can slide this over. Grab the other piece number 3. And we're going to apply glue to our little tab here. And connect that to piece number 3. Press and hold that down. A little off screen, sorry about that. There we go. And then finally, I'm just gonna, this is piece 3, the end of it. Okay, and I've got my little score mark there indicating the 4 on the same side as the 3. It's gonna go on like this. So go ahead and apply your glue to this longer triangular tab. I'm going to take and glue that into place. Just put that up right there like so, and press and hold. Okay. There we go. Now, very gently, and kind of start squeezing these together because I want to lay this down on one of the sides. Okay, so you can kind of start shaping this. We do need to bring this in and connect the end of the other number 3. So let me make sure that you give yourself enough time for all of these little connections to set. If you try to do it prematurely, you'll probably find that things will just kind of come apart. So do yourself a favor and just wait. Give it some time. Okay, and I'm going to show you a little trick here on how to make this a lot easier for yourself. Okay, because we already cut out the template. We're going to use that in a second. But before we get into that, I'm going to do this twice, okay? We had to break this down into 2 sections. So what we're going to do, you can see here we've got this piece, and you can tell here that this is going to go right on here up to this little score mark. And you want to pretty much get it right on top of that score mark, okay? We get that centered, and this is going to make it one solid piece. And what we can do, here's what I would suggest doing to make this look as seamless as possible, is start by applying glue just below the score mark there. And then on this side, on this piece here, go ahead and do the same thing. But then let's do a little line right out to the edge, and then we can spread that glue out to the very, very edge, okay? And then what we'll do is get these lined up right onto that little score mark. Make sure you've got it good and centered. You can kind of feel it. It should also be flush right here in this little corner, and then press that down. That's going to make it one solid piece. Now there's going to be a little bit of a seam that's visible just in these little corners here, but I'm going to anticipate that many of you will probably get some fake snow to put around the edge of this to kind of make it look nice and snowy. Okay, so that's that. We're going to repeat that process one more time with the bottom. We can call this the top or bottom, either way, same difference. Okay, throw a little bit of glue on there, and then we'll flip this over, do the same thing, and then a little bit right up to the edge. So we can spread that right up to the very, 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 very edge. Okay, just pop that right into place. Just like that. Press it down, make sure everything is spot on, aligned. There we go. Flip it over, push from the other side. And there we have it. Okay. That looks pretty good. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take this, just kind of spread it open. Let's take our little base here. We're going to pop it in. We're going to actually use this as sort of a guide to help us figure out the shape, and then we'll also use it to help us kind of get this glued down. It'll give us a little bit of support. Okay, so you can see here, we need to tuck this in this way, and then just follow the contour of the shape. Okay, so you can see here that we have most of this shaped. Now there's one little section of this template that doesn't match up with this green part. It's just this little guy here, and it was such a tight little space that we just omitted it. But again, we're just using this foam core just to kind of give us something to push on as we're getting this glued down. So don't worry too much about the positioning of it yet. The idea right now is just to get one side glued down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just gluing and anchoring down one section at a time. We're going to start with number 1. Okay, so go ahead and throw some glue on there. Let's get a little bit out to the very edge, And see, it's just nice to have that foam core in there to kind of help us give something to push up against. Okay, so we'll grab one of these and let's get that nice and centered onto that first section there. Make sure it's centered and out to the edge, and press down. Use that foam core to kind of give you something to push up against. Just kind of nudging it in a little bit so that I have something to press up against. Okay, now this will not help us all the way around, but it will help us in a lot of key areas, and that's all we're concerned with right now. And just keep holding, ensuring that it's making good contact, just so that we can get this first section anchored. Okay. So that is in. Now what you can do, and if you're finding that using this foam core is actually maybe making it more difficult, then you don't have to use it. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of glue on this little triangle now, and that needs to be tucked in this way. And then you can press that down right into that little corner. Again, you can see that it doesn't, the foam core doesn't need to be in the exact area. It's just nice to have something to push up against because it's so thin, you're not gonna be able to get your finger in there. So it is helpful. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and apply some glue to this little triangle here. Spread that out, tuck it in, get it nice and lined up. And again, we have some foam core there that we can push this down against without worrying about ruining this. There we go. Now, I'm going to go ahead and apply glue to this large piece, section 2. Spread that out to the very edge, and then you can just kind of slide and tuck that under. Get that nice and lined up, and press that down. Make sure it's nice and aligned. There we go. I can take it and kind of push it in a little bit to push that foam towards me. Just keep holding that. There we go. Okay, I'm going to work my way over to this other side now. So we kind of meet in the middle. Go ahead and apply your glue to this tab. Let's thin that out, spread it out. You can lift that up and tuck it in and under. Get that lined up. And press that into place. Use that foam to your advantage. There we go. I can slide this next piece out a little bit, lift this up, and apply your glue to the next tab. There you go, you can see it there. Tuck that under, line it up, and press and hold. Slide it this way a little bit. And it just makes it a little bit easier to work with. There we go. And as we start getting towards the end here, this thing is not going to be moving around as much since it's going to be kind of assuming its final position, in which case we'll just have to kind of work around it. Tuck that under and get that nice and lined up, just like that. Still have that foam core in there, helping us kind of keep things in place. There we go. And then what we'll do, again, there's this little area that's kind of missing from the foam core just because of how small it is, but we're actually going to leave that for last. Okay, so here's what we'll do next. I'm going to go in here now, and I'm going to glue this section down now. Piece number 4, right up to the edge here, like so. Make sure you get it good and centered. You need to shift it a little bit. There we go. Go ahead and apply your glue to 4. like so. Spread that out. You don't have to. It just looks nicer if you do. The seams look nice and tight, nice and crisp. Okay, there we go. Again, that foam core really makes this a lot easier because you can push and you've got that resistance from the foam core that helps you really push the tab and this piece into place. Okay, so now we're going to take this piece number 3. It's got the Roman numeral 3 on there. Apply our glue, tuck it under, get that anchored, and then I think we're just going to kind of go back and forth until we get to that little skinny area. Okay, so I've got glue on that tab. I'm going to tuck that under. You might need to tuck this one under too, just for now, just so it slides in nicely. Get that in there. Line it up. Make sure it's tucked in and press down. If you have any excess glue that's kind of bleeding out, just rub it off with your finger. Not a big deal. There we go. Yeah, see now, I'm not going to be able to move this around too much more, but we can always lift this up slightly. I'm going to go over to this one actually, since it's still fully visible. Let's go ahead and apply our glue to that one. Spread that out. I'm going to take that and tuck that under. Might need to tuck this one under as well. Snag it on something there. There we go. And get that lined up. Perfect. There we go. Okay, holding that in place. All right. Beautiful. I'm going to go over here and put glue on the next section of number 3. Let's thin that out, spread it out, and pop that in place. Let's get that lined up, just like that. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of glue on this tab with the Roman numeral 2 on it. And essentially after this, we're going to take the foam out, finish off this bottom part or top, whichever. You can decide if you want this to be the bottom or top, doesn't really matter. Slide that in there. Everything else should kind of fall into place as far as the tabs. There we go. Okay, these we'll leave alone for now. We don't need to glue these down. We'll do those separately in just a second. That'll be our last one for this side. Okay, and then let's go over here and let's get some glue on this one. And I think we could probably just get both of these done in one shot here. Spread that out. Okay. Pop that in there. Get that lined up. There we go. Pop that in. Press that into place. There we go. Okay. Just keep holding. All right. Now let's flip this over and open up these tabs. This is the little area here where there's no support. And that's by design. Okay, these are, you can open these up. So now let's pop this out just for a second. And what we're gonna do is just finish these tabs off. So take this little section that's left over and let's tuck those tabs underneath. Okay, just need to kind of force them in there. Make sure they're inside like this, just like that. Move these out of the way. Okay, and then we're just going to put glue on these remaining 3 and just kind of glue them in manually. And if you want to try to get your glue nozzle under there, you can. I'm going to take a scrap piece of paper and just throw a little bit of glue on my scrap and then just paint this large tab first. I just put it on the underside of that. I'll look at it from this angle here just to make sure that it's aligned correctly. It is. Now I can press down from the inside. Perfect. Let's get a little bit of glue on my scrap. And I think with this last little corner here, we can pull these tabs up and just paint a little bit of glue on both of them. There's just 2 tabs left. I'll flip it over. Just make sure that it's nice and aligned right there. Just give that a quick little press. Quick little press there. Okay, and now all 3 of these remaining tabs are glued down. And that just leaves the same configuration on the other side here. Just go ahead and bring those tabs in. Okay, we're going to align it just like we did on this side here. Okay, and let's start with this large tab. Just throw a little bit of glue. Yeah, I guess you could just get your nozzle on there, that's fine. So the large tab here, get that lined up. Press it into place. There we go. And that just leaves these 2. Let me move these out of the way so you can see. And let me just use my little technique here. Okay, so I'm doing this so you can see. It's this tab and this tab. There's only 2 left. And I'm going to use a piece of scrap. Just a little bit of glue on some scrap paper. And I'm just painting it right on those little tabs there. The 2 left over. I'll flip it around so we can see our alignment. And press those right into place. And there we go. Okay, so now those are glued down. All right, so again, we can move these tabs out of the way because now we are ready to put this back in. And when you pop it in, just make sure that the tabs are not getting in the way. This should go all the way in. Make sure the tabs are on the outside. Helps to kind of flare them up before you put it in. Okay, let me do as I say, not as I do. Just move all the tabs out of the way, at least vertical. Better yet, kind of facing out a little bit, just to make room for that foam core to go in without getting stuck on these pieces. There we go. Should go in like a glove now. Perfect. All right, now you can take these pieces and fold them over on top of your foam core. Okay, and then all we need to do is close this up, and essentially you're going to do the same thing here. Initially, anyway, we're going to start by anchoring it to the back. We do sort of have to apply the rest of it all in one fell swoop, which will be okay. Chances are we're going to have to go in and do a little bit of painting with our scrap to get the rest of it to really look nice and seamless. But I'm putting this piece on first. Get it nice and centered right out to the edge. Use your finger to kind of feel to make sure that it is exactly where it needs to be. And once we have that anchored, the rest of it you can see naturally just falls into position. We just have to get some glue on there and pop it down. Now, again, from experience, very unlikely that you're going to get this to look perfectly seamless on your first go, which is why I always recommend having some little scraps cut into tiny little rectangles so you can go in and do a little additional painting of some glue in the little areas that maybe don't have the cleanest of seams. Okay, now honestly, since we took most of our time on this side, this is probably going to be my top anyway. And if it's not perfectly seamless on the bottom, it's not a huge deal. I'm still gonna clean it up because that's just how I work. I never wanna cut corners, okay? So here's what's gonna happen. We are now going to apply glue on the remaining tabs, and I am going to go heavier on the glue here. I want it to be a little bit thicker than normal because I've got a lot of real estate to cover. And then I'm gonna spread this glue out nice and thin and close it up. So I have my base constructed, and at this point, I did go around with my scrap paper, just kind of painted a little bit of glue on any little areas where I thought there was too much of a gap, and it's literally just like we did before, where I take and apply a little bit of glue at the tip of a scrap piece of paper, just kind of pop it in between any little areas where you have some gaps, and then just press and hold it until it's fully set. And then pick a side that looks the best, maybe has less blemishes, so on and so forth. And then we're going to take, because we've included a little snowdrift element, and this is how it's going to go on. It's going to stop right about here. Okay, and what we can do is probably take and begin applying it here. So I'll just take a little bit of glue, pop it on there, and then you can use your surface as kind of a guide to help you get that in there. Okay, and it may also be helpful just to grab a dowel. Make sure that you've got it right up to the corner there, and then just press it up against the side. I guess if you want, you can use hot glue if you want. I don't like hot glue, and use it only when completely 100% necessary, because it's just a little thick and, you know, kind of just gets all over the place. So I'm going to fold this back now, and what I'm going to do is just apply a little bit of glue on this next section here, like so. And then just drop that right on there, using my table as kind of a guide for placement. And I'll just use my little dowel to push it up against the structure, get right in that corner. There we go, just like that. And then we can flare this back and apply our glue on the next edge, and probably just get in here too. Okay. Just pop that right in there, kind of pushing down, making sure that it's flush with my table. And just give that a press with your dowel. Okay. And right there in that little corner. And then right here in this little corner. Just like that. Okay, make sure that it's flush with your table, just like flat on the ground. Okay. And that was not completely flat. Just make sure that it is. Okay, you can lift this up and peel this section back. And I've got a little bit here. And then I'll take and put glue on that last little section, like so. Wrap that around. Make sure it's flush against the surface. And just press that into place. Same with this little section here. And there we go. Okay, so there's your little snowdrift. It'll look nice from the front. Okay, this little part here, we do want to glue that down. So just put a little bit of glue right at the base of that. Okay, and that's going to go over. Make sure it's flush with the bottom. Press and hold. Then we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. And then we have this little snowdrift for the front. Now we'll put that on once we have both sides in place. Okay, so just like I did the first time, I'm going to start by anchoring it on this piece here. Since it's a little bit thicker, it's got a little more surface area. And actually, you know what? Let's just do this one too. That way we can just get this whole little wedge in there. Just pop it right in there. It's already flush with my surface. And then just give it a press using your dowel. And then this way you can get right in that corner. I'm kind of pushing down on the drift to make sure that it stays level with the table. There we go. Give that a nice press. Okay. I can flare this out. Now, you may need to go a little bit slower, depending on how much glue you apply. I'm just trying to kind of keep it to the bare minimum, just enough to know that it's going to stick, and not enough to where it's so wet that it's going to take ages to dry. And that's kind of a learned thing, I think, over time. You just kind of get better at figuring out what that perfect amount really is. But definitely use that dowel to help. Okay, make sure it's, again, flush with the table. There we go. And that just leaves this little fella here. Just a little bit of glue on that, making sure that it's flush with the bottom. Press that up against the side, there we go. Let's head back to the front and get this little piece anchored. Fold that over, again, keeping it flush with the base, the bottom of the base. Press that down. And then finally, what we can do is we're going to apply glue. And then finally, what we can do is we'll just do a nice little line down here on the green, and you can actually put glue on this entire white piece. And we'll take this little end cap, pop it right on there. Make sure it stays nice and centered and lines up with the existing two little sections. There we go. And voila. Perfect. Grab that dowel and use that to kind of help me push. There we go. So this is my prototype. Don't worry about all the weird tape on it, but you can see, and we still have some stairs that we need to put together, but it's going to create a nice stable base with a little bit of a snow drift all the way around it. It's going to look cute. Okay, all right, so our base is done. You can put that off to the side, and we are now ready to start putting together our structure.